Hello everybody and welcome to another tutorial in camera and lens repair. And this time it will be about a lens with a very stiff focus ring. It's the Mamiya-Sekor C and it's a 3.5 aperture and it's 35mm focal length. And it's for the M645. Yeah, let's have a look inside. It has a really stiff focus. I mean, one can turn it, and I really have to take really a really a tight grip on the back here to turn the focusing ring. Really stiff. And so I would like to show you how you actually can do that. Before we continue, a little note, because when working with this lens, it is very important to set small marks when disassemble, because it has a lot of helicoids. Actually, I made some notes with we'll come closer to it when I disassemble. And it has taken some time to actually figure out how was it put together. But you see all the notes here. It's extremely important. There could be some slightly difference in your lens. Well, maybe not so much. But yeah, it was quite interesting. I haven't re-greased it yet, and I haven't cleaned it out, so it will be as it is. So yeah, but let's jump into it. We have some different tools, which I will come closer into when working with it. And it has some small fungus in here, but we'll take it in a sooner. You see, to get into the lens, actually, we need to take out the back lens group and the front and the inner, because this lens has a floating focus system. It will say some lenses are steady and some other are moving. And I will come closer into it. But let's jump into it and begin to take it apart. And there's nothing really underneath the rubber ring here, so we can just let it sit. But we can start with the back here and take out the 3 screws here holding the mount. And when we do it, set the lens, set the aperture to A and 3.5. It's especially, it's just for now, but especially when we assemble it again, it will be more useful. But to get rid of the back lens group, because then I can better work with the front. I could also, let's do it in that way, put a cap on here on the back and begin with the front. It doesn't really matter. We will end it up the same place. But yeah, I will start with the mount. Sit with 3 longer countersunk screws, and you can see it's quite long. And since it's Mamiya, they also back then use a lot of thread lock. And for that we can, if the, I mean it's not necessary, but if in case the screws are really tight, one can add some isopropyl alcohol, especially on the screw head. Since I have been into the lens, the screws are not that tight, but especially on the other places there are. So we can unscrew this. And there is also a steel ball, a little steel ball underneath here, in line with the index mark. So just so we know that when we go further into the back here. And since I have the back out, I can also have the aperture ring. You see here, this pin is the connection from the camera, or I mean from the lens to the camera, and it sits here. So that's it. And now we continue with another 3 screws, one here, here, and here. And when you take off this ring here, there will be, where the 3.5 here, or the index mark, in line with the index mark, there is the little steel ball and the spring. So beware of that. So when you unscrew the last screw, have a good grip here on the aperture ring, so it will not just flew off, because then the spring and the steel ball will just fly away. So yeah, it's a bit tight. And then we will just do it again. So there, there, and there. Remember, there are actually 6 holes in this back here, but when we put it back in, you will see that those 3 in this ring is countersunk. And on the back here, those 3 are countersunk. So they can only sit in one way, this ring here. So off with that again. And I have been into the lens and of course set marks and measure how the helicoids sit, so it will be more easy for you to actually follow the process, hopefully. So don't move the back ring here. So now we can lift it up, this one up here, and that's it. And next, the ring that follows the aperture cam ring, I think it's called, I don't know, but see here, it also has a pin, and it goes into here. It goes into here. It can only sit here because the gap here is too small, so it only sits over here. And it can also sit in one position only. Now put that aside, and then next, have a finger here. So when you lift up the aperture ring, or you could do this, have a finger here and gently very gently lift up the aperture ring, wiggle a little, and it will hopefully come out. So the little tiny steel ball here is sitting where it actually should, instead of flying away. So, and then the tiny spring here. So we have that away. Now, this is just the aperture ring, and there are all the nuts here. So now we can take off the back lens group, which is not it doesn't sit that tight, but we'll again use some isopropyl alcohol to simply add some isopropyl alcohol so it will soften the thread lock around the lens mount. And then we will take the one of the rubber cones here. It will be number 3. See this one, number 3, and simply put it over and wiggle a little. So, and then it's free. So that's the back lens group. And I will just put it on a stand so it can sit. It's the 50mm. It's really good for this case, so it can sit there. Bloody hair in here. So next thing is we simply get to the front. And you might think, okay, why not just take the front off first? Well, I could start one way or the other. It depends. Now, to take off to get in from the front, we need to take off the name plate here around. And again, if it sits too tight, which could be the case, it wasn't not really the case in my lens here, but one can actually add a lot and let the isopropyl alcohol suck in and hopefully soften the thread lock, which there could be some. Now, use the 70mm this white rubber cone, and so, and it came off. So you can see there probably was some thread lock in here. Then you can just unscrew it. So that's it. And now we get into the next lens element, which is the very front, and we unscrew it because the inner, which you can see in here, this ring here is the next lens element, a lens group, which is a middle lens group, and this lens is only one lens element. I cannot come in to soften the thread lock because, I mean, it's not really possible to get in there. So, no. So I will take the 70mm and hopefully it's possible to take off this one, and I can just unscrew it. So there. So, and then you just let it fall into your hand. You can see there is actually another ring, because there's the back here, the back ring here, and you can see there's a little thread lock thing here. And then the front ring for this lens here, it can be unscrewed. And yeah, so it is. No need for taking this apart. And now we look into the middle lens group, which I can unscrew. And for that, I need another one of those, and I need to put this lens into a different mount, just to put it in here. So I need the 50mm to unscrew this lens group here, and just make sure there is no fragments here. The lens is quite curved, you probably can see here, and it will well, it's a bit tight here, so I need to loosen it, because there are two notches here, one there and another one over here. And for that I will use my old compass, which can be very useful. They have two flat pins, and then I can do like this and just loosen it. Have a good grip on it. Oh. So now it's loose, and then I can use my rubber tool here to simply unscrew it. And we can possibly get it a bit more out. No. So we can just do this and unscrew it. Yeah. Those gray rubber tools are a bit, it's not that tight as the rubber cone. So I prefer the rubber cone over this. Maybe this tool can be useful. It's just a gasket from the hardware store, but it's more sticky rubber. So let's see, it hopefully can work better. Yeah. So, and it's loose. So now I can just let it pop into my hand, and then we can see what's going on. Wow, there's a lot of oil. Strange. I mean, there should be no oil in here, I would think. And then we can just put this in here. And now we are much more into the focus system here. But what I need to take off the front ring here. Well, we could actually, because I need to take out the inner here. And the focusing system is quite interesting in this lens. So I would like to measure something. Let's see. You see, from at infinity, when I set the lens to infinity, so I can measure from the front to the very back, but it's not precise measure. So I need to take out the inner part here. It sits with 3 screws, one here, there, and there. Before doing anything, and now it's very important to set marks. So we set a mark here in line with the index mark. My index mark is here, and it goes all the way up to here where I already set mark. And you better be sure, set a mark here, 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 and especially on this ring here, because that's the inner part here which I want to take out. So let's do that. It sits with 3 screws, and there is also a small spacer. So when we have this out, this part out, we have the naked focusing system, or the focus assembly. And it's in 2 separate parts. So there. And this is a 2mm JIS, which is important. Now, then I can push here on the back. Make sure it's on infinity, because this ring can move. See? So it has to sit in line with this all the way up here. So now I can push this out, whoa, like this, and take the whole inner part out. It's tight fit, really tight fit. And then we go into the inner part. Now my index mark is here. My index mark is here. So it looks like we are looking into the parts like this. You see, there are 3 helicoid keys there, and there are 3 notches where they can sit. Let's say one, no, it's difficult to see. There's one here, there's one over here, and there's one here. See this one. And I think it's a bit oily in here, so I will do something with it sooner. And now we have the naked, the naked focusing helicoid. Make sure it sets to infinity. So. And if you by accident has moved this ring here, it doesn't really matter. When you set the mark. And down here, before we continue, it's also important to set a mark down here, in line up here. Important. Because you can see this ring can move. And also down here, it's also important to set a mark. So set a mark here. No, I mean, no one will see it ever. So now I can actually begin to measure more precisely. And in this case, could be different in your case. At infinity, from the very front, it will say here, to the very back. There should be something around 55.10 millimeter or so. And remember, it's, as you can see, I said a small arrow. It's because when you look here, it's not the very back. It's more this part, not the very back of the lens. So we are more into, you see there is a difference in between this and the inner here. So it's more to make sure it sits correct. But it begins to set a mark here, so everything is fine. So now I can actually measure how, how long the focus system is, and then put my caliper on and measure. And my desk here is rubber, so it can possibly be a little, let's say, not so precisely. So I need something hard to put it on. And it's extremely important here. I can just go off the table. Well, it will be around, let's say, around 55.10, be around 13, sorry. And so to unscrew this front, I need to unscrew it a bit over 1.5 turn till off at around 8 o'clock. It will say, here's my starting point, and I will come off around here. It will say, if we have 12 o'clock up here, it will be around over here, maybe 1930 or so. So now I can unscrew this. Am I on infinity? So I can turn this ring and follow one full revolution, and now it begins to be more loose, and it's not that ring that is tight. So make sure it will come off there. Well, it was a little bit before, but it's important. And this is how it looks. It looks a bit dry in some way, but there is a lot of shiny oil in here. I know it's difficult to see in the camera. And in here it looks even more. So it's not that good. So I need to clean it. And next step will be again, I will set a mark here, still in line with the infinity mark, because the focusing ring itself, has to sit correct, because the middle helicoid, which is a metal here, also need to set a mark. So set a mark here, and also a mark on the focusing ring itself. That's important. Those two has to line up. That was some of it. Now we go to next step, because then I need to take off the focusing ring itself, and then I need to take off the rubber, and for that I need to have a spade like tool, so to dig under the rubber here, and you can simply get it off. It's not that much hard, because then at infinity there's actually sitting a stop screw, but there is also 6 sitting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 set screws which hold the focusing ring itself to the shiny, the white metal aluminum ring. So I need to unscrew those 6. Not unscrew, but just loosen them, and because then I can measure just a few turns. So there, no need for fully unscrew it. You will lose them probably. So there, and this one, and keep keep fingers on the focusing ring, so it will not move. Then the last one, so there, it should be fine. Now the focusing ring is actually loose, but I need to unscrew the stop screw here. Fully unscrew it. Yeah, we'll just take it out. It is not that necessary to unscrew it. It can just sit there. So now I can take out the focusing ring itself, and that's it. And now I have the more naked system without, they still have the helicoid key, so nothing will come out yet. The index mark has to be in line with the scratch, which I also need to set here. And I set the mark here. I also set the mark here, both on the shiny metal ring and also on the black ring. We will not take off the black ring, it's not necessary, because it's not necessary. I could do it, but why unscrew it? Because it's just you see the shiny ring here is just put in. There's no helicoid between the shiny ring here and the black. It's just a tube you put it in. And it also sits with some set screws around here, so don't do that. So now we actually need to do some measure. And I will just measure from there. It will say at infinity. I will just read that. At infinity, from the front of middle helicoid to the back of outer helicoid is 37.92 millimeter or so. And I need to use 6 and a bit over half turn. It will say 6.5 turn and a bit more. So it will come off at around 8 o'clock. Hope it makes sense. So I will measure here. It will say something like that. If it's okay. And it's from the front here to the very back. It will say the very back here, not the inside here. It will say here. Now that's clear. And well, then I need to actually take out the helicoid key here. And before I do that, I will also mark them with 1 and set 1 here, 2, set 2 here, and 3 and set 3 here. So, and then I can unscrew them. But make sure, well, it's not, yeah. Make sure it sits in line with the index mark here. Then I can unscrew them, but they also was quite tight. So I simply need to add some isopropyl alcohol on all the screws head. And we need a little more. So, and let it suck in to soften the thread lock. Because then you will, if the screws are too tight, they could, yeah, they could come loose. So we begin with the 1. It is much better. So there. So, and the next one. So there, and this one. And it comes loose. There are 2 of them. And the third one. So, the last one. Yep. So now it's loose. Now it's actually very loose. And then it is important, if we look here, I I need to unscrew it a bit over 6.5 turn till off at around 8 o'clock. It will say we have, well, let's say 12 here, and it should come off around over here. So yeah, a bit over 8 o'clock. So I can count in relation to the index mark, and my mark sits here. So I need to just go ahead. 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So now it's quite loose, so it should come off around over at this point where I already have set a mark. So let's see over here when I turn it, and then it comes off. So now it will be easier than you might think, because there's no really, well, not this curve here is not on the other side, but it's not a problem when you put it on again. I will show you. So now we have the inner helicoid. Well, this one here, and again it also, if you might have haven't got it, the mark I set in the very beginning, it will say here, should be in line with this one, this mark here. No, it's difficult to see, but make sure there is a mark. And now we can actually measure how long this actually stick out. So we can see here. So we can measure at infinity. Well, it is already on infinity. From the front of the middle helicoid to the very back of the inner helicoid. It will say, from the front, it will say here, to the back of the inner helicoid, it will say the very back is here, because the inner helicoid sticks out a bit. But it's just easier to measure from here to the very back. So now I can try to measure it. And it should be on the black part here. So now I can put it on here, see what it measures. And it will say something around there. So now I'm very sure how it sits. And before I take it apart, it is important, you know, the index mark I set in a very early state. This mark here goes all the way to the inner helicoid, which is difficult to see in this very shiny. I will say something like that. It's difficult to see, I know. Maybe if I go a little closer. So you see there is a mark here, and I also scratch in the infinity mark, and it sits in line up here. So now I can turn the inner helicoid a little bit more, turn till off at around 2 o'clock. It will say, if we look here on the back, because that's where I actually set the mark here. It sits right there. You have 12 o'clock here and you have around 2 o'clock there. I know it's difficult to see, but because it's so shiny. So this it's really sticky. So now I can turn it, the inner, very inner helicoid. It goes clockwise when we see it from the back. It's really tight. I have my mark here. My mark is here. And here's my off mark. It will say it comes off over here. Poof. So it is. So now the helicoid system is fully disassembled. And yeah, the only thing I need to do is to clean the helicoids, and then give it some new grease, and then assemble it. That's it. So it will be the assembly process will be in the next part. So see you sooner.